It started out with a tweet, as many things do when it comes to Donald Trump. He said he wanted both Canada and Mexico to tighten up their borders with the United States to stop two things: illegal drugs and illegal immigrants. Now, if he had just ended things there, I'm not sure anything would have happened. I mean, do you? I mean, Trump has been saying that for years. During his whole campaign, during the 4 years he was out of office, and during the 4 years he was president the first time. Because I think politicians and diplomats and bureaucrats in the permanent state would say, sure, yeah, blah, 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 that's just Trump being Trump. What's new, right? So he added a bit of jet fuel to it. He demanded that these countries fix the borders by January 20th, the day he takes office. That's quite some demand to make. It gave both Canada and Mexico enough time, though, if they were truly interested in cooperating, to at least agree in principle and to come up with a bit of a plan. I mean, aren't we supposed to be enforcing the laws now anyways? We already have police and border police. Why not, just enforce the laws of our own country? You'd think we'd enforce our own laws for our own sake, or else what's the point of us having a law? But it was that final flourish, the or else part of his tweet: do this or be slapped with a 25% tariff on anything you export to the United States. Of course, that really has nothing to do with fixing the border, other than, I suppose, the irony of taxing legal imports with a tariff while illegal imports of drugs continue. I don't think you have to be a master negotiator, though, to know that that's just Trump's way of adding an exclamation point. He's got our attention. Just do the right thing and the threat goes away. I don't think he wants to do the threat part. He wants you to look at that and be motivated to do the real thing he wants: seal the border, which we should want to do anyways, especially if Trump is about to engage in a mass deportation. We don't want those folks just traipsing across into Canada. It's in our interest too. Now, Mexico complied pretty much immediately. Trudeau did not. Now, he flew down to Mar-a-Lago for dinner, and he was welcomed. That's quite a powerful table that had gathered there, including the incoming Commerce Secretary. But obviously things didn't go as well as Trump wanted, because the next day Trump's side leaked to the media that Trump had been joking about the 51st state thing. Obviously a joke, but a joke that would resonate. It touches on Canadian insecurities, I think. It touches on the historical battles that we've had with America going back centuries, War of 1812. And more recently, what happens when Canadian prime ministers get offside with U.S. presidents? Here's an old film I found.
The White House lawn is fast becoming an international heliport. President Johnson comes out to greet a welcome visitor, Canada's Prime Minister Lester B. Pearson, who with his wife arrives for a 2-day visit. A visit Mr. Pearson had promised upon his election last fall. Mr. Pearson has recently returned from conferences with French President Charles de Gaulle, and though he thinks U.S.-French differences are not unbridgeable, he is not here as a go-between. He is here to promote U.S.-Canadian cooperation, as his Secretary of State for Foreign Affairs, Paul Martin, then U.S. Secretary of State Dean Rusk, signed the treaty for a multi-million-dollar power and flood control development for the Columbia River Basin in the Pacific Northwest. Later, the two presidents signed a treaty of a more sentimental nature. This agreement makes an international park of the summer home of President Franklin D. Roosevelt at Campobello Island. Thus, in the realms of the future and the past, the United States and the Dominion of Canada draw closer together.
Yeah, that was the happy propaganda version. Everything's fine. It wasn't really, between those leaders in particular. Here's a snippet that wasn't in the news until much later. Things even got physical in 1965 when Pearson made a speech at Temple University proposing a pause for peace. Later, at Camp David, an infuriated Johnson grabbed the Nobel Peace Prize winning prime minister by the lapels and screamed, "Don't you come into my house and piss on my rug." You can sort of get it. I mean, imagine a foreign leader coming into your country and denouncing your war. So things aren't always friendly between U.S. presidents and Canadian prime ministers. It's a real art being the smaller party in that partnership. And Trudeau doesn't have it. Anyways, you know all of this, but my point is Trump has not stopped poking at Canada and at Trudeau. In fact, he's done it again and again. He put out social media posts pretty much taunting Trudeau, or Canada as a whole even, like this one implying a U.S. invasion, maybe, I don't know. Or this one just deliberately calling Canada a state and Trudeau a governor. He's done that again and again, actually. And when Chrystia Freeland detonated Trudeau the other day, Trump tweeted his sympathy to Trudeau and said Freeland herself was toxic. And the latest one was this one. He said, no one can answer why we subsidize Canada to the tune of over $100 million a year. Makes no sense. Many Canadians want Canada to become the 51st state. They would save massively on taxes and military protection. I think it is a great idea. 51st state. Now, I'm not exactly sure how Trump believes they subsidize Canada each year, unless that's a typo. He's saying $100 million, and you may know two-way trade between our countries is about $1 trillion, or 10,000 times that. I think he probably meant to say 100 billion, and I'm guessing he means a trade surplus. It's not a subsidy. It just means they're buying $100 billion a year more than we buy from them. And I'll give you an explanation of how that happens a little bit later. But my main point is to show you that tweet, that Trump is still poking at Canada, still pushing the 51st state thing. And he's now adding a commercial grievance to his border grievance. He's saying, we subsidize you. You know, I just reordered the book, Art of the Deal. That was Trump's best-selling book from way back about how to negotiate. I read it when he was elected in 2016, and I did a little monologue about it. I can't find my old copy, so I want to read it again. I'm 100% certain, going from memory, that this kind of badgering and these dramatic statements are part of his negotiating style. I know they are. I mean, have you ever seen this weird thing he did to put Larry King, the old TV interviewer, on the back foot?
Do you mind if I sit back a little bit? Because your breath is very bad. It really is. Has this ever been told to you before?
No.
Huh? Okay, then I won't bother. No, actually,
That's how you get the edge.
Trump later said Larry King didn't have bad breath at all, but Trump said he did to put King on the defensive. Trump does that sort of thing, doesn't he? At least to people he's in a tussle with. It's like his really grippy handshake, you know the one?
There's perhaps no better way to express a sense of control in business and in politics than a firm handshake. For Trump, it's a full contact sport, and he's got a few power moves.
Anyway, so we're in a pickle. That first tweet by Trump started a chain reaction, and now Chrystia Freeland is out of cabinet, and it looks like that scuppered Mark Carney's planned accession to cabinet, and Trudeau couldn't be weaker at home or abroad. So Trump keeps pumping this 51st state thing. Why not? I mean, here's Jean Charest, the former Conservative MP and Liberal Premier of Quebec. Let me read it carefully because he has some advice for all of us. Every Canadian, regardless of their opinion of the Prime Minister or political affiliation, should feel deeply offended by President Trump's remarks. We might one day be grateful for this wake-up call. For too long, we have been complacent in our relationship with the United States and the rest of the world. We need to unite and rise to this historic occasion to shape the future of Canada. So Charest is really revved up. He used capital letters and all. He says it's a wake-up call. We need to unite and rise to the occasion, yada, yada, yada. But he doesn't actually tell us what to do. What does rising to the occasion mean? I don't think he knows what to do. His only one piece of advice is that we should all feel, quote, deeply offended, which is just an emotional feeling. It's not really a plan or an activity. Be offended isn't really practical advice, I don't think. It's certainly not constructive advice or how to solve a problem. I'll come back to that again in a moment, what constructive advice might look like. But why is this so heavily heard by Canadians? Is it insulting? Sure, a little bit, I think. Although it implies that Canadians would want to do this, it wouldn't be a hostile move. But why does this prick people like Charest? I mean, why does this work on Canadians? But I don't think it would really work, say, on the Brits or Australians. I don't think it would. I mean, maybe geography is part of it. I suppose Trump did something like this once before. I don't know if you remember. A few years back, he joked about buying Greenland, which is owned by Denmark. Rebel News actually sent a reporter over there to talk to locals about it. Greenland is almost completely empty. The reason Trump was interested in it, besides him being a real estate guy who always thinks about land, is that I think it was China was looking to establish some sort of military presence there, and Trump wanted to scare them away. Would Denmark really sell the land to America? It's hard to imagine they would. Maybe. But America has indeed grown by buying land before. Alaska was bought from Russia. The Secretary of State was called Seward. They called the deal Seward's Folly because it was thought to be a crazy expenditure of money at the time for useless land. That's what they said. Before that, there was the Louisiana Purchase, which doubled the size of the USA by buying land from France. So I suppose it's not that crazy. But mainly the idea shakes things up. It made Denmark, in the case of Greenland, say, well, do we want Greenland or not? And if we do, why would we lease some of it to China? And it's fun, of course, and it shows Denmark that Trump was thinking about them fondly, and everyone is flattered when people talk about them, especially in an admiring way. So how does talking about making Canada the 51st state work? Well, it's a possibility. Quebec set the legal precedent. You can separate from Canada. The Supreme Court had a hearing about it. It's legal. The Supreme Court, in fact, outlined the process. And remember, the United States has been eyeing Canada for a long time. That's what spurred our country to make the Canadian Pacific Railway. That's why it's called the Canadian Pacific Railway, to fasten the west of Canada to Ontario and Quebec before the Americans could grab it. But who would and who wouldn't want to be an American? I bet a lot of people prefer Trump to Trudeau. Not everyone, but I bet a lot of people do, especially in the West.